Hi everyone, my name is Hayley and I'm very excited to be presenting to you today. So the topic of my presentation is healing from bullying in early adolescent boys, specifically the positive impact of both forgiveness and revenge fantasies. A little bit about my background. I'm a clinical psychologist and my main passion is supporting schools and developing unique programming to really target youth mental health development. And I've been doing that for about 15 years in different places in the world. And my PhD focused on school bullying, and this study was a part of my PhD. And I also have 4 other degrees in psychology and criminology. So the setting for this study was in Australia, where I lived for a number of years. Very beautiful place. If you've never been there, I encourage you to check it out. And this study took place at MACQUARIE University, where I was doing my PhD, as I mentioned, under Professor Ron Rapay and Natasha Todorov, and also the late Doris McIlwain was one of my supervisors as well. And the context for this is that I was working with Professor Rapay, and we knew we were going to be talking about bullying. We knew we were going to be studying bullying. And he asked me to go away and figure out what about bullying excites you? You know, what is the thing that lights you up? What makes you interested in this topic? And so, great supervisor to ask such questions. And so I went away, and what I came back with was looking at restorative justice and looking at this concept of forgiveness. And what I really landed on when I was looking into the research on restorative justice in bullying interventions was this example of Nelson Mandela and everyone else like him, who suffers tremendous abuse and violence and oppression and is able to rise up and forgive and let go. And you know what really excited me about this, and still does, is that in the letting go, in the forgiving, that didn't just benefit him. It didn't just benefit his world. He was able to, become this incredibly powerful leader to guide a nation towards reconciliation. And I see this again and again, and this is what excites me. I'm really interested in how can we take situations of trauma, situations of tragedy, and how is it that some people going through those can find empowerment in that, can not only just overcome it, but really use it to become this incredibly wise and powerfully impactful person in the world. So that's the basis of what I was looking at. And the first study that we did was with university students in Sydney. And what we looked at was figuring out what would happen if we did some processing around a bullying incident in a specific way using an imagery exercise. And so I'm going to actually lead you through that exercise right now so you can get a real sense of what we're talking about. So if you're willing, I'd love you to just close your eyes for a moment. And I'd like you to think about a situation that you've been in where someone has wronged you. So something that comes to mind that's relevant, that feels important, that brings up some feelings for you. Could be recent, could be in the past. I just want you to, or I invite you to, bring up this situation and just think about it for a moment. And just contemplate the situation, what happened. And I'd love you to really imagine that you were in that situation again. So really picture for yourself, what was it like? What did they do or say? How did that make you feel? What were your thoughts? What were your actions? Really put yourself back in this place and really imagine that it was happening right now. And just notice what happens in your body, what happens in your mind, what happens in your emotions. We're just gonna allow it to be here right now, and we're just noticing. Okay, now I would like you to imagine that you were able to process all of these feelings, all of this hurt, all of this pain, and you were somehow able to let it go. You were able to release the frustration and the anger. You were able to come to a sense of peace in yourself, and you were able to find it in yourself to forgive this person, not for their benefit, but for yours, so that you can become empowered again in this situation, so that you can let this go, so that you don't have to carry around the burden of this experience. I want you to picture what you would do if you forgave this person. What would that look like? Would you say something to them? Would you never see them again? There's no right or wrong. Just imagine for yourself, what is an empowered forgiveness like for you in this situation? And then picture you're doing that thing. You're saying something, you're doing something, you're acting in the way that you would if you'd really forgiven this person. And just feel into yourself what that feels like. What's that experience like to have forgiven, to have let this go, to have moved on, and for this not to be something that's hanging around in your consciousness? Okay, just sit with that for a moment and notice what that feels like in your body. Then when you're ready, I'd like you to open your eyes. And so this imagery rescripting, what that is, and that's not an exact representation, I ad-libbed there, but the idea is we're first inviting the person who has experienced a bullying incident in the past 6 months to imagine it as it is, to think about it, to contemplate it, and then to create a different ending for themselves. And we had 3 conditions. So we had one group that was doing forgiveness imagery, like what you did. So imagining they forgave. We had one group that imagined that they avoided that person. And we had one group that imagined they took revenge. Now, we found that the forgiveness imagery had way better outcomes in every way. The way they were thinking and the way they were feeling. Except we did a stress test, and forgiveness was more stressful than either of the 2 of them. So the outcome was better, but in the short term, in how they were feeling and thinking, but they were more stressed by it. So I got all excited and I thought, well, this is it. You know, forgiveness does work. It is powerful. It is helpful for victims of abuse, of bullying. But the reason we find it hard is because it causes stress. And so we then went into our second study, which is the topic of the paper that I'm about to share with you, where we thought, okay, well, how can we understand this in a different context? And how can we take our learning and really apply it? And so what we kind of concluded as a result of that was we came up with this rather simplistic understanding of, well, you know, forgiveness must work because we're letting go of our negative emotions and we're bringing in more positive emotions. It seemed really, you know, self-explanatory. And so this is what we were sort of going into the next study with. And so we thought, well, what happens when we apply this to early adolescent boys who are arguably in one of the highest risk factors when it comes to bullying, because they are more likely than other groups to become bully victims. And we know those have the worst outcomes. So kids that are bullied and then in turn bully other kids. And so we thought, let's figure out if this works in this context. And we ended up dropping the avoidance category from the study because the avoidance and revenge in our first study had the exact same outcomes. And so we thought, let's just drop avoidance and let's just look at forgiveness and revenge, because we were trying to hone in on, you know, we were hoping to get the results of, you know, forgiveness is more impactful and powerful, and then we could sort of promote that way of being. Now, what we found is actually something very different. In this study, when we had these early adolescent boys, again from Sydney, from schools in Sydney, they were between 12 and 14, and they had all encountered a recent bullying victimization experience. When we had them visualize forgiveness, half of them visualized forgiveness, half of them visualized revenge. And then of course, after we did a processing for both of them. So we helped, you know, after we took our results, we helped those boys that had imagined revenge to make sure that they had processed it, and they did some forgiveness work as well. But the results after having done the revenge and the forgiveness really astounded us. So we were not surprised to find out that the boys who did the forgiveness imagery ended up, having great outcomes. So better, in terms of their thoughts and their feelings, how they were thinking about the situation, everything became more positive. And we're using the PANAS schedule, so looking at what are their immediate sort of thought and emotion reflections, and then we had some cognitive variables of how they were seeing the situation, how much power they felt they had, those kinds of cognitive abilities and processing. But what surprised us is that the boys that imagined revenge also had incredibly positive results. They had the exact same results as the boys that imagined forgiveness. And this was very confusing for us. We were not expecting this, but when we went back to the research and when we contemplated it, we started to understand things better. And now that a few years have gone by and I've been working with this in practice and working with this in schools and programming, I have some more insights into this, and we can see it a little bit more clearly. Because what we ended up concluding is that when we're talking about healing from bullying in early adolescent boys, the emotional release of those negative feelings is only the tip of the iceberg. So that piece is very important of releasing those emotions. But what is also potentially very important is emotional integration. So being able to sit with those feelings, no matter what they are, be real about what we're thinking and feeling, which might be a desire for revenge, but being able to be truthful and honest and therefore integrate all of those feelings is a vital part of it. And this is what we were sort of contemplating in this research. And this is what I've since been applying and implementing. And I really, really see how valuable this piece is, the honesty about the integration of what's really there. And then the final piece that we know is so important in bullying is having an empowerment perspective. And so we, in our research and in our work, we know that when we can forgive, when we can truly forgive, there is an empowered perspective that comes into play there. But this perspective of revenge can also give, especially potentially young adolescent boys, a sense of empowerment. And so that brings up two really important points. One is which we have to really make sure we're giving these boys the space to process, because thinking about revenge is one thing, that's safe, but if it feels so empowering, if we don't let them process it, of course that's where these bully victim categories might come from, the desire for revenge. But then also this recognition that if we can allow space and allow the processing and allow an idea of revenge to be there, as long as we do the work to let it go, to process it, to again integrate it and release those emotions, that could be a really powerful way that we're helping these boys, make conscious choices. And that's where we really ended up. And this is where I've got to as I've taken this research out in the world. The term that I've come to is courageous independence. What we need to teach these boys, and this is true for all of us, but especially in these early adolescent boys, is what I like to call courageous independence. The ability to lean in and feel and be honest about what's there, what we're feeling, and then from that place of awareness, be able to make a thoughtful, conscious, independent choice of how I choose to act. But when we're caught up in the feelings, when we're caught up in the pressure of it all, it's really hard to be able to have a clear thought of what I want to do, because we're just in that fight or flight, we're in that knee-jerk reaction. So that processing, that allowing of those deeper, darker feelings to be there is a vital part of it. So that concludes my talk. I'll take myself off there so you can see it. I'm really happy for you to get in touch at any point. As I mentioned, I've developed this research into programs for schools based around documentary stories of real young people sharing their experiences to really create that space for deep dialogue about what's really there and allow that deep integration and emotional processing. So please get in touch if you want to chat about this research or anything else around youth mental health. Thank you so much, and I look forward to conversing with you in the chat in a few moments.
Hello, my name is Tamar Tarablus, and I'm a PhD student under the supervision of Professor Yaakov Yavlon at Bar-Ilan University in Israel. And the topic of my research is novice and veteran teachers' willingness to seek help after being victimized by students. And first of all, I would like to begin with some background. Violence against teachers. When we consider violence against teachers, it is a problem in many countries. Teachers report on different kinds of violence against them, such as physical violence, verbal violence, social violence, damage to their personal possession, sexual harassment, and online violence. Such violence can lead to emotional stress, and as a result, this may lead to increased rates of teachers' burnout and their desire to leave the profession. However, little information exists in the literature on how teachers actually cope with the violence against them. One of the strategies to cope with violence the teachers have is help seeking. Looking at the research literature, most of the studies focus on willingness to seek help by students and not by teachers. What we do know from the literature about help seeking is that students and even adults are often reluctant to seek help, since help seeking may have a price of negative psychological cost that may outweigh the gain from help seeking. When we consider the price of help seeking, people regard help seeking sometimes as a sign of their incompetence, and they believe that help seeking involves an admission of failure. When we consider teachers' support system or who they can seek help from, we have two main types of sources that can help teachers. One is the formal help providers, such as the school management, and we have the informal help provider, such as the teachers' colleagues. These both were included in our research. Such help seeking can be inhibited by different factors, and we would like to find in our research what can encourage teachers to seek help and what inhibits them from help seeking. The main aim of the current study was to investigate violence against teachers and their willingness to seek help, and we wanted to differ between novice and veteran teachers and their willingness to seek help from both the school management and their colleagues. When we defined novice teachers in our research, based on the literature, novice teachers were with 5 years of experience or less, and veteran teachers were with more than 5 years of experience in teaching. This leads me to the next slide, which is about our research method. First of all, the population of our study included 166 teachers. Most of them were women. Since in Israel, most of the teachers are women. Some of them taught in elementary school, some taught in junior high, and some in high school, and some of them taught in more than one school level. Our instrument was a self-report online questionnaire, which was based on 3 subscales. One was the teacher's victimization scale. The second one was the willingness to seek help scale. And the third was the social demographic scale, which included general information about the teacher, such as their age, gender, the place of work, and their level of seniority. However, I would like to emphasize that none of the details were meant to identify the teachers, and the participation in our research was both voluntary and anonymous. How did we conduct the research? We collected the data online during a 1-month period at the end of the school year, And again, the teacher's participation was voluntary and anonymous. And we used the teacher's professional development unit at the university to distribute the questionnaire to the teacher's emails. And this leads me to the study's results. In our study, we examined 6 types of violence against teachers: verbal violence, such as name calling; social violence, such as ignoring a teacher; personal possession violence, such as causing damage to the teacher's personal possession; sexual violence, such as harassing a teacher; and cyber violence, such as bullying a teacher online. Could be, for example, like posting a hate page. And before we built the modeling approach, we built a dichotomous version of victimization. That was whether the teacher was a victim or not in each type of victimization, regardless of the frequency of exposure. As you can see from the result diagram, teachers suffered mainly from verbal and social violence. When we asked in our questionnaires about the different types of violence teachers could report that they suffered from, they could report on more than one type of violence, because we wanted to find out which type of violence had the highest rates and not to limit the participants in their choice. And it was found that higher exposure of any type was associated with teachers' lower help seeking, both from management and from colleagues. When we examined the interaction between teacher seniority and violence exposure on help seeking, we found that violence exposure as a predictor of help seeking differed between novice and veteran teachers, meaning that veteran teachers were less willing to seek help than novice teachers. As you can see here, the red line represents the veteran teachers with high seniority, and the blue line represents the novice teachers with less seniority. And to investigate the contribution of the type of violence, we performed a set of linear regression models in which we tested the victimization effect on help-seeking outcomes. Interestingly, when looking at the effect of the interaction between teacher seniority and violence exposure on help seeking, in seeking help from management, as you can see here, the difference was found when physical, sexual, and overall exposure to violence were the independent variables. And what you see in this figure is the overall, the interaction between overall exposure to violence seniority and their interaction with health seeking management. And this is the interaction between physical violence, seniority, and help seeking for management. And this is the interaction between sexual harassment, seniority, and help seeking for management. In seeking help from colleagues, the interaction effect was found when the victimization type was physical violence, property offenses, and total exposure. Here you can see in this figure is the total exposure to violence and the interaction between total exposure to violence, seniority, and help seeking from colleagues. And this is the interaction between physical violence, seniority, and help seeking from colleagues. And this is the interaction between damage to personal property, seniority, and help seeking from colleagues. Our main findings, to summarize, our main findings were that higher exposure to violence meant less willingness to seek help. We can assume that the price of help seeking grows and outweighs the gain from help seeking as the violence grows. And veteran teachers were less willing to seek help than novice teachers. The reasons for this can vary in different countries. In Israel, for example, novice teachers are even encouraged to seek help for various problems connected to their work. And they usually have a teacher mentor and the teacher, so help seeking is part of their training program. This might partially explain why novice teachers are less reluctant to seek help. As for our recommendation for future studies, Since we found in our research that higher exposure to violence and higher seniority were negative predictors of willingness to seek help among teachers, in future studies, we would like to find what other factors can encourage or inhibit help seeking among teachers. Thank you very much for listening and hope to meet you in the question sections.
Hello, my name is Lisbeth Kvarme and I am a professor at the Oslo Met University, and I'm presenting together with Ann-Jeanette Heimann. She's also a school nurse and a master student. And now I will share the screen with you. Support group in school, we have called it. And vulnerable school children have been my interest for many years. I have done my master in University of Oslo from 1997, where I looked at what the school nurses do to prevent bullying. And later on, my PhD from 2011 from University of Bergen. I also looked at the bullied children and how they experience being bullied. And bullying has very much negative consequences for the school children exposed to it. As we know, they can have difficulties making friends, poorer relationship with classmates, often alone. And we know that just a friend is very protective factor against bullying. So it could be that the support group could help the children in this way. And as I am a school nurse, I'm very busy with the school nurse role. And her role is to promote health, prevent illness, and support children with social, emotional, physical problems at school. And it's important to collaborate with the school staff and parents to create a good psychosocial environment for the children. We have some collaboration, and Partnership Against Bullying has financially supported this study. And we have applied through the Public Health Nurse Association. And Adults for Children is an organization in Norway that are doing this education for the teachers and school nurses. And we have about 5 to 10 schools that are participating in this project. I don't know if you are familiar with the solution-focused brief therapy, but it's a very interesting, promising tool that you have the focus on what works and the resources for the children. And Sue Young, she has, it's a teacher from England. She has developed this solution-focused therapy against bullying that we are trying now. And the aim of this study was to explore how the bullied boy experienced having a support group and how the support group experienced to participate. In addition, we have explored how mothers and school nurses experienced the support group. It was a qualitative, explorative design with the individual and focus group interviews in January 2021. And the sample consisted of 10 participants, 8 boys, 2 mothers, and 1 school nurse. The results after we have we have to apply for regional ethical committees to do this study, and we recorded all the interviews, and then we write it out, and we discussed what was the main findings. And the main findings was that they're feeling stronger, safer, and happier. They have done what a real friend does. Bullying affects the whole family. working together as a team, support group as a useful tool. And the bullied boy said that he felt stronger, safer, and happier after he got the support group. He said that they have sort of asked me if I would like to visit their home, and I have been bullied. They have been tried to back up me in a way. Yes, they have done what a real friend does. So I'm glad that we have a lot of fun when we are at home with each other. This illustrates how important it is for a bullied boy to be included in the class by the other participants. And he felt stronger and safer and happier after receiving the support group. And we do also know that bullying affects the whole family, not only the boy who was bullied. His sister react on his bullying, and the mother and father was very worried that he don't want to go to school, and he couldn't sleep well at night, so he had many difficulties when he was bullied. And the mother said, it affects everyday life. It hurts me when he comes home and is sad and crying and in pain. And then you feel quite frustrated because you feel you can do so little. Except I got to comfort him, I get to talk to him, she said. So she struggled a lot with his problem, because it was the whole family's problem when he had the problem. And they did also talk about working together as a team. Mother said, no, my son is happy in a way, so I have never been worried that I will affect him negatively. Rather, I'm very happy that he could help improve the class improvement. So it was very helpful to work together as a team. You can't prevent bullying only by yourself. You have to have a team around you. The boy have to have the support group to support him, and the mother have to have help and support from the school nurse and the teacher, and then everybody think it was very helpful for them. And the school nurse said that support group is a useful tool. She said it's a fantastic tool that has been long awaited. And she also said it's so important to be true to a solution-focused approach and plan this measure well with the school and the parents. It's important that the school nurse or the teacher who have practiced this solution-focused support group, that they know what kind of question they shall ask for, that they ask for the resources for the children, and try to help them figure out the negative spiral he was joined in when he was bullied for many years at school. It's important to motivate the child to see what he or she can work on to get better at school. So it's important that the school nurse use the solution-focused approach when she talk with the bullied boy and with the support group as well. So the main findings of this study was that the bullied boy felt better after receiving help from the support group, family, and school nurse. Bullying affected the whole family and the bullied boy. Working together as a team is important to prevent bullying, and the school nurse was pleased to have the support group as a useful tool. Here is some references that you can look on if you are interested. Thank you for listening to this lecture.